This was indeed something Kevin had been worrying about for the past week. Before, he had sworn that his life would belong to Roman if the young master protected his family. But after arriving at the Dmitri mansion, Kevin began to doubt whether an ordinary person like him had anything to contribute. Coincidentally, Roman also called Kevin today for this matter. This is the day he decides what Kevin's role is in his life. However, he doesn't want to decide the path he will take by himself. Instead, Roman gives Kevin two choices. First, if he is afraid of holding a sword and shedding blood, then he doesn't have to become his sword on the battlefield. Instead, Kevin can follow Hans and learn to become a perfect servant, only used to working in the mansion. Second, Kevin will become Roman's sword and protect his master. This seems difficult because he has never touched a sword before. Furthermore, if he decides to embark on this path, Roman will have to test his will by using torture methods. First is the method of crushing limbs. Just like the name, it is a method that causes extreme pain as if the bones are being burned with his muscles being crushed. If Kevin perseveres through that process, he will prove himself worthy enough to stand next to Roman. The second method is for him to take Roman's sword and cut off his own limbs. In that situation of hurting himself to the extreme, his power will also be unleashed. Kevin can become strong and possess an unstoppable speed. In his previous life, the Mad Demon, a stray who didn't even know the existence of martial arts, was able to become one of the 4 heavenly kings with only his will. And now, Roman wants to use that same method to test Kevin, who he thinks is somewhat similar to the Mad Demon. No matter what your choice is, I will definitely make use of your value. How I use you is up to you to decide. Roman's words rang out, but Kevin's hand clenched. When faced with this dangerous and most important choice, many memories from childhood to adulthood appeared in his mind. Kevin was born in an old house broken, could collapse at any time near Dmitri Castle. When he was young, he had to follow his father to do everything to survive. Therefore, when he grew up, Kevin was almost able to learn how to do everything. However, his life was still stagnant. Even extremely difficult because he had to face the bullying of stronger people, such as the Bloodfang Gang. Kevin has long understood that this is the life that the weak have to go through. That is the reason why he never dared to let himself forget that fateful day. Even when his father Roman Dmitri used a dry branch to defeat the Bloodfang Gang on the street, that incredible strength completely conquered Kevin. He picked up the sword from the ground. Kevin didn't understand how cutting off his own limbs could help him. But as long as it could make him stronger, help him escape from his current miserable life and possess the same power as Roman, he would do it. The shining sword in his hand made Kevin extremely nervous. Saying he wasn't afraid would be a lie. He took a deep breath, then almost mustered up all the courage of his life and raised the sword. I will do it. In another development, there was also someone who was restless. That was Chris. He had chosen to leave the knights and follow the young master. But Roman responded to this by disappearing for a week, making Chris very anxious. Today, when he caught Hans, Chris anxiously asked where the young master was. As a result, he found out that Roman was chatting with Kevin, and he also told him not to let anyone in. Chris's mood not very good. Like a concubine suddenly fell out of favor. Who is Kevin? At this time, Kevin's screams came from the sword training ground. Blood was smeared on the blade, and he fell to the ground. That night, Hans was shocked when he saw the blood-stained sword. Young master, when did you get injured? That's not something to worry about. I'm fine, because that's not my blood. It was the first time Hans saw such a satisfied smile on his young master's face. Of course, Roman didn't have the magical power to make Kevin's hand grow back, so he wouldn't let him cut off his own hand. At the moment when Kevin was about to cut off his own hand, Roman put him into an illusion through the charm of the illusion demon spell. In the illusion, everything would happen as if it were real, even the pain. But in reality, in the present, those things didn't happen. Kevin's recklessness. Roman had witnessed it with his own eyes. He had swung his sword to touch his wrist before entering the scene. If Roman's spell had been a little weaker, or a little slower, Kevin would have cut off his own eye and hand. But through this event, His value was proven. Roman had two very valuable cards in his hand. Kevin and Chris. There are 2 weeks left until the party. And 6 months until the war breaks out. He had to take advantage of this time to teach them a lot of things. The next day, when Kevin had regained his senses, Roman taught him the mana enhancement technique. It was not an ordinary technique, but a technique that the mad demon had used. Although it was powerful, it was also very dangerous because it could corrode the user's soul. Those who mastered the mana enhancement technique could fight with incredible strength under extreme pain. And even if their limbs were severed, they should never lose their will. That was why Roman gave Kevin such a test yesterday. In his previous life, the mad demon was Roman's right-hand man. He had mastered this technique while enduring extreme pain. Now he had found someone like him. This young man Kevin. But before teaching him mana enhancement, Roman couldn't help but remind him a few things. When as this magic develops, the pain that the person will have to endure will also become more and more intense. Of course, he also has his own reasons for teaching Kevin this magic. Because it is the fastest way to teach a teenager who knows nothing. Even the basic foundation of mana. If he masters the mana enhancement technique, Kevin will be able to protect everything around him. As soon as he heard this, Kevin's eyes lit up. To him, Roman was like a god. Not only did he save him from the beating, he also wiped out the bloodfang, protected his family, and now he even taught him magic. Kevin's gratitude was so great that it could not be expressed in words. But along with that was also a great deal of concern. Young master, why do you trust me? I promised to give my life to you. But I haven't shown you anything. I can run away after learning this magic. Kevin's question is understandable, but Roman didn't answer. Instead he gave him another day to rest before officially training. Thinking back, in the previous life, the mad demon also asked him a similar question and he didn't answer. Because Roman knew that Kevin would never betray him. Because just like the mad demon before, when they get stronger, they will know how much the price of betraying the heavenly demon will be. The next morning, their first class began, but strangely, Roman didn't teach Kevin anything advanced. Instead, he taught him basic swordsmanship. This made Chris a bit annoyed. He didn't know where he came from. A strange kid appeared, taking all the attention of his young master, making Roman ignore him, and even less teach him anything. Chris followed Roman because he wanted to become stronger quickly. But with Roman treating him like nothing, Chris began to feel impatient. Swinging a sword beside his master would be better. Should I beg my master to accept me back? Chris lazily stretched his shoulders. But thinking about what Roman said to him before, he felt that he should wait a little longer patiently. And so Chris swallowed his anger. The next day he still went to watch Roman teach Kevin swordplay. Then the next day, the day after that, and many days after that, Roman still showed no signs of having touched on teaching Chris. Finally, he exploded. Master Roman, I've decided to follow you for 2 weeks now. The first week was because you spent time in seclusion. Then you pushed me aside to train this brat. If you did that because I was rude to you at first, I sincerely apologize. So please teach me more. I'm confident that I can learn anything you teach. Chris poured out all his anger like a bullet, while Roman was not moved at all. Didn't I say it before? You just observe me and learn. Chris was shocked. Roman did say that, but he didn't think this sentence was literally true. It turned out that Chris had been ignored for the past 2 weeks because Roman really only intended for him to observe and learn from him. Seemingly understanding Chris's coldness, Roman explained before he could say anything more before. You know, everyone has a different way of learning. Because like Kevin, he doesn't know anything, so when he achieves a certain achievement, Roman needs to guide him from beginning to end. But Chris is different. No matter what you teach him, Chris will just force himself to memorize it instead of trying to understand it. So you want me to continue observing the stars? No, Roman replied. Then threw Chris a wooden sword. While he was still confused, Roman made an even more shocking request. That is, Chris must fight Kevin in a match. This request made both of those young men gasp. Above all, this is more like an insult to Chris. When he is already a 2-star Asura knight. And Kevin is just a kid who knows nothing about swordsmanship or mana. In this match, even if Kevin is your opponent, I will only tell him how to defeat you. Kevin is basically my clone. If you still think you are right after this match, I will personally teach you. Chris tried to restrain his anger. A series of curses started running through his mind. Of course they were all cursing Roman. But in order to prove himself, Chris still accepted this match in the end. Then, right here, I will prove to you that I am not someone who can be fooled easily. So a 2-star Asura knight, along with a young apprentice, stepped onto the arena. Roman stood behind Kevin, as expected. As soon as he entered the arena, this young man's legs were already weak. Roman then chose his words to encourage him. I know you are at a disadvantage. But if you lose this match, what will you lose? Nothing. There are countless people in this world who are stronger than you. The Bloodfang who suppressed your family by force, or Chris who is eager to defeat you to gain my recognition. They are no different. So are you going to stand still and take it all every time? Roman's words seemed to have hit Kevin's weak point, immediately activating his combat work. Kevin now raised his sword, starting to defend. This made Chris even more annoyed. He never thought in his dreams that he would have to fight a newcomer like this. Moreover, the opponent's eyes were full of vitality, as if he had a chance to win. If Roman wanted to tame him through this match, then Chris would definitely not let him have the chance to do so. As the 2 starting words were just shouted, Chris carried a strong anger and rushed towards the opponent. And in front of his overwhelming speed and strength, Kevin was no match. It was also clear as day. However, the premise of that was when the 2 fought alone. And in this match, Kevin had Roman supporting him from behind. Just before they started fighting, he heard a loud voice in my head. Defend yourself with your sword. Chris will strike a surprise attack. There's no mistake. This is Roman's voice. He was giving Kevin every step in the fight. With this instruction, Kevin successfully blocked Chris's first attack. Roman continued to instruct him to take a sideways step, then aimed at Chris's chest when the opponent was about to launch a neck kick. Roman's previous attack was not yet awake, but Chris was about to launch it. But Kevin did not react in time. In the end, he was still hit by Chris and fell backwards to the ground. Roman asked him to stand up and continue fighting. Meanwhile, I will continue to use sound transmission to silently instruct him. Jumping to the right quickly, Kevin did not have time to think. Immediately followed, and this right flip helped him avoid Chris's next attack. Chris also seemed surprised to see Kevin escape, turning around and aiming straight at the opponent's left chest. Kevin also obediently did according to, with Roman's guidance and the basics he had learned over the past week. Kevin's attack also made Chris wary. However, here, Chris was still the one with much more combat experience. Therefore, Kevin just counterattacked and was kicked again. He held his chest, trying to suppress the pain. Chris had indeed exposed an opening just now. It was just that Kevin's sword swung out too slowly, so he was counterattacked. Blocking the attack from above, Roman's voice continued to ring in his head. Kevin reflexively raised his sword to block. Under the opponent's enormous pressure, Roman instructed him to dodge to the right to escape. But before Kevin could do so, he was kicked straight in the face. Blood kept flowing from his nose and the pain made him dizzy. As for Chris, he was also quite lost strength. Chris didn't know anything about Roman using mana to transmit sound to the opponent. So Kevin's resistance surprised Chris. Roman was watching very attentively on the side. He also knew that Kevin was not Chris's opponent, because his body couldn't keep up with his instructions. Meanwhile, Chris reacted quite quickly, but this situation was also interesting. On this side, Kevin was struggling to stand up again. Although he was beaten painfully, he was quite excited to see that young Master Roman was in absolute control of this match. Because even though the opponent was a 2-star Asura warrior, Roman could still accurately grasp every move. Kevin also quickly realized that the problem was in his body, and if he could do exactly as Roman instructed, then defeating Chris was completely possible. Chris was now no different from a puppet being held in the palm of Roman's hand, and Roman was playing with him at will. On Kevin's side, this young man was the most resilient. So even if he was beaten to the ground, he still had the strength to stand up. Every time like that, Kevin felt that he had adapted a little more to Roman's instructions. This made Chris gradually confused. Even though he was trying to defeat the opponent, Kevin kept dodging the attacks, even counter-attacking at crucial moments. It would be too hard to believe if he said this was just a coincidence. On the other hand, Kevin was very happy, because even Chris, who was considered the most talented rendering genius of the Dmitri family knights, was struggling against Roman's ability. When he personally experienced his master's level, Kevin felt even more that following him was the right thing to do. At that moment, he knew that this would be as the person he will forever respect as his master. And no matter what nonsense Roman says, he will blindly listen. Kevin's desire to become the sword in Roman's hand is getting stronger. And he understands that the key to doing that is to have a will stronger than anyone else's. Kevin holds the sword in his hand tightly, continuing to wipe into this unequal battle. Of course, the lack of speed cannot be compensated in a day or two, let alone in a few hours in this fight. So even though Kevin was instructed by Roman, he was still far inferior to Chris. The two of them kept fighting like that for a long time. Kevin was already beaten to the point of being pale. Chris really didn't want to fight anymore, because if he did, a part of Kevin's body might be disabled. It's just a pity that the opponent was so reckless that he risked his life. Even though he was seriously injured, Kevin had no intention of stopping fighting to the end go. Kevin's stubbornness made Chris's blood boil even more. If that's really your intention, then I'll give you what you want. From now on, every time you look at your deformed arm, you'll regret it. Chris rushed forward, aiming straight for Kevin's left arm. But the moment he rushed forward at his fastest speed was also the moment he revealed his weakness to the reverse. Roman didn't instruct Kevin to dodge. Instead, he asked him to rush forward and attack with all his strength. Chris completely failed to anticipate the opponent's recklessness. He dodged to the side in a chaotic manner before he could forcefully avoid this attack. But because of that, Chris lost control of the situation. Everything was not over yet. While Chris had yet to regain his balance, Kevin continued to attack aggressively. In Chris's eyes, it was just a crude attack full of loopholes. And with his 10 years of fighting experience, he naturally missed the move. Chris wanted to counterattack, but Kevin blocked it. The current position accidentally put Chris at a disadvantage. Just when Roman thought Kevin had succeeded, Chris guessed the direction of his opponent's next attack, and he used all his strength for one final blow. Kevin's sword was sent flying, and he officially fell to the ground. Roman's mood was quite complicated, seemingly a bit satisfied, because Chris had guessed that Kevin's second attack was just a defensive move and successfully counterattacked. You won, as promised. From tomorrow on I will personally teach you a lesson. This is your choice, Roman said again, then carried the unconscious Kevin away. Late that afternoon, Chris returned to his room with an extremely unpleasant mood. Why did I decide to fight that apprentice? Chris was agored. Winning somewhere was useless. Not only wasting time but also losing at the last minute. Yes, Chris felt like he had lost, even though he had knocked Kevin down. But Kevin's final attack was exactly the same as the one that had caused Chris to lose when he sparred with Roman 2 weeks ago. That was a day he would never forget. And if it weren't for that experience with Roman, he felt like he would have had a hard time beating Kevin in that situation. This was really a ridiculous thing. Like, thanks to the sparring with Roman 2 weeks ago, Chris had won against a rookie. He let out a self-deprecating laugh. I had grown up just from that experience? The next morning, Chris arrived at the training ground very early, although he had barely slept all night because he was busy wringing his hands and thinking. After those complicated thoughts, Chris made a decision and wanted to come early to tell Roman that he didn't need any teaching. Instead, Chris wanted to find a way to get stronger by observing Roman. Chris felt that he had really understood just in a training match yesterday. He thought Roman didn't help Kevin, but when he thought about it again, it was impossible for Kevin to be able to smoothly execute those attacks and blocks on his own. Thinking carefully, Roman's guidance in that training match was also creating an opportunity for Chris to cope and grow up on his own. Roman was indeed no longer the failed young master that Chris once knew. Although he didn't know exactly what happened, Chris knew that the young master had now reached a realm where even the team chief Jonathan also couldn't approach. The observation and learning that he said meant self-enlightenment by watching him. Anyway, what you learn by yourself will be remembered longer than being taught by others. That's why Chris made this decision. And Roman also seemed very happy to see that he had been enlightened. So he continued his career of holding Kevin's hand and teaching him. And Chris continued to stay on the side to observe the two of them. Time passed again. The day of the Barco family's social party had arrived. Going far away to return. But almost leaving. This time coming back seemed a little different. A week before the social party. Everyone was gossiping. Have you heard anything? It was about Roman Dmitri. He said, I heard that his engagement with the Lawrence family was broken. Followed by laughter. It was clearly the Lawrence family's fault. According to the Viscount's report, the young man who was with him also continued to gossip. That was just an excuse. He must have felt sorry for his precious daughter after seeing that fool Dmitri. Scene changed to another place. The lady holds a cup of tea, but breaks off an engagement when the war with Bracco is near. He speculates. That only means that the eldest son of the Dmitri family is worse than the rumors. The servants also gossip. But I also heard that he defeated all the Bloodfangs. The other lady heard that and turned around and said, Come on, do you really believe that? It must be just a way for them to save face after being rejected. Scene changed to another place. A loud laugh echoes throughout the mansion. Anthony said loudly, I can't believe that Roman actually broke off this engagement. He's too easy to manipulate. He raised his glass. Roman has accepted the invitation to the upcoming party. His servant continued, Yes. We have received the invitation letter from Dmitri. Anthony smiled slyly. Good. Good. Everything is going well. He sipped lips. I'm really looking forward to next week. It's been a long time since I've been so excited about a party. The day of the social party. Roman thoughtfully called Hans. He asked, Do I really have to wear this? Hans explained, This is the first formal meeting party since you broke off the engagement. I can't let you dress casually. Mr. Luyen Tuyen. Roman could only keep silent. Hans's expression became worse. But I'm sure he won't ignore this masterpiece. He asked seriously, But I put all my effort into it. Right? It seems like he was hit in the heart. Roman was helpless. Okay, I'll wear it. Make him happy. I knew you would say that. In another place, Chris seemed to be upset. He asked with a serious face. Why was he so late? If this continues, the young master will arrive first. Kevin shouted from afar. I'm sorry, he quickly explained. I'm still not used to wearing armor. Chris shook his head helplessly at Kevin. Why did you become like this? Kevin replied in confusion. It's because no armor fits me. Even in the forge, he was sweating profusely thinking. Even if he was helped by the young master, I still couldn't believe that I almost lost to such a guy. Kevin lamented over the helmet. Chris saw this and could only look at him with dissatisfaction. He said sternly, Listen carefully here. Chris instructed him. We are both the Lord's retainers. And also Dimitri's face. It is not an exaggeration to say that his reputation will be decided based on our actions. Cannot be reckless. You must be very careful with your words. Kevin quickly obeyed. Okay, I will remember that. He pulled out a sentence. Sir Knight. Making him a little happy in his heart. Okay, just ask me if you don't understand anything. Kevin's eyes lit up. Thank you, Sir Knight. Chris reminded angrily. His helmet was tilted again. So he suddenly shouted. The scene changes to a castle. The music is melodious everywhere, mixed with the voices of everyone in the banquet. A man sipping his wine asked, Will Roman really come today? He said smugly, I can't believe he will attend Barco's party. After he broke off a political marriage, which he forced to get, when he clearly knew that Barco was aiming for Lawrence. The girl standing next to him spoke up. That's why everyone calls him a fool. If he had a brain to think, he would have clung to one of the two families. He blamed. Dimitri's status was shaken all because of Roman. The other man continued, Even though Dmitry is the most powerful family in the northeast, they are a bit greedy for the south when they still want to maintain a relationship with the Barco family. But at least he will attend to make up for his mistake. There is someone on that side who is paying attention. Sophia wondered, what kind of person is Roman Dmitry? The person standing next to her answered, you will know when you meet him. He leaves a terrible impression. And he is also nothing to look at. That is because he is too short. He sneered. And the way he was complacent about being the eldest son of the Dmitry family. The person standing opposite also criticized. Even I would find every way to break this engagement. If I were a woman. Then the butler immediately interrupted the crowd. The eldest son of the Dmitry family. The door opened. Roman was walking in. He walked into the party. His face full of confidence. Everyone in there, all turned their eyes towards him. They were all talking excitedly. Is that Roman Dmitry? He is so different from before. This is absolutely impossible. What happened to his hair? Sophia staring at him for a while. Then she approached Roman. Sophia spoke. It is my honor to meet you. She bowed down and introduced. I am Sophia of the Grisot family. She humbly said. You probably have never heard of our family. Although we are not an outstanding family. But my father, Namthuk Grisot, is willing to sacrifice his life for the Cairo Empire. He replied. I know very well about the Grisot family. Which made Sophia a little surprised. Do you really know about the Grisot family? Roman replied. How could I not know a family that has existed for centuries? He recalled what the butler said. This is the information of all the families in the northeast that you requested. Hans wondered then. But why did you suddenly want to see all of this? Roman replied. Since I will be attending the party as a representative of my family, I should at least be equipped with some basic courtesy. I must remember the background of each person I will meet, as well as their heritage. In order to win the hearts of others, I must put forth a commensurate effort. He thought to himself. That was especially true for him. The so-called fool of the Dmitry family. On the surface, isn't that the family that was favored in the northeast for a while? The Grisot family's wood is famous for its high quality in the Cairo Empire. I heard that your brother has succeeded in sensing mana. Roman expressed his sincerity. I sincerely congratulate your brother on his achievement. The two happily talked to each other, making the other two guys dumbfounded. What is this? He quickly stepped forward to start a conversation. Hello Lord Roman Dmitry. I am Maya of the Von family. He smiled lightly. I was greeted by the eldest son of the Von family. Roman said to his family. Wasn't the Von family's male general who had made famous achievements in the last war? I was very touched when I read about it. Maya blushed and replied. I am very grateful that you think so. The two people behind them also want to get along. She approached to greet. It's been a long time. Lord Roman, you have changed a lot. You hold back. Compared to me, Miss Aris is still beautiful. Roman went to the main topic. How is your mother? I heard that she has not been well recently. Dmitry has received many benefits from our agreement with the hero's family about 10 years ago. I am also grateful that you have shown goodwill to us. Both sides talked smoothly. The young man said, Lord Roman, I seem to have misjudged you. I always thought you were difficult to talk to because you were always drunk. He took the opportunity to say, I want to drink some wine. But it seems I will have to endure it. The banquet butler went to call him. Lord Roman. He passed on the message. The young master invited him to the back room. Hearing that, Roman's face darkened. He thought. It seemed like it was time for him to find out who was provoking him. The scene changed to outside the palace. Chris looked around. The other families had many knights as their entourage. Kevin beside him wondered, Sir Knight, what is this social party? He reminded him, we will never have the chance to go there. So don't pay attention to it. Hey, your helmet is tearing. Someone noticed them. What's wrong with him? The guy standing next to him immediately introduced. I heard he was Roman Dmitry's entourage. They observed the two. Chris still hadn't provoked Kevin at this time. Put it down, making him confused. Then they laughed. It was really funny. Disparaging them badly. I heard that Roman Dmitry is the abandoned eldest son. But I didn't expect that he would bring along a guy who can't even hold a sword properly as his entourage. Chris calmly told Kevin to ignore them. They took advantage of the situation and said, "What do you expect? Dimitri's level is only like that." At this point, Kevin couldn't hold it in anymore. The party was going on in a very aristocratic atmosphere. Roman stood rooted to the spot among the people walking back and forth to keep the party going. His eyes were blankly looking forward. It turned out that the thing that had caught his eye all this time was the beautiful girl with long golden hair who was smiling and talking. Her smile was indeed very beautiful. It felt like her smile made the atmosphere around her brighter. Anthony walked over and leaned on his shoulder, asking meaningfully, "Who were you looking at so intently?" "Roman." He was a little startled and turned around to ask his friend, "Antonia, by the way." Standing next to him, Roman asked softly, "Do you know that blonde lady over there?" Anthony was a little surprised. "What do you mean? You don't know her?" "She was Miss Flora." "Yes. That blonde girl with a bright smile that made his young heart flutter. That lady was Flora." Roman seemed to have engraved the name Flora Lawrence in his mind. His face was red. His heart was pounding. That was Roman Dimitri from many years ago. And now Baek Jong Hyuk in Roman's body was very different. The door to the room just opened slightly. Roman with platinum hair in a royal noble outfit just walked in and heard his friend calling, "Here Roman." Anthony was sitting on the chair. He still looked the same. When he saw Roman he excitedly called out, "What have you been doing during the time I wasn't around?" Finally met the person he needed to meet. Roman secretly rejoiced in his heart. So this person was Anthony Barco. He sat on the opposite chair and blabbered to Roman to sit down. "I heard people say you've changed. But I didn't expect you to change so much. Please sit down here and tell me everything." Roman looked around before sitting down. There were still a few glasses of wine. Half-drunk fruit juice. He secretly assessed. There were still a few traces showing that someone had been here. An empty bottle of wine lying under the table further strengthened his belief that someone had just been here. He thought, the real reason he chased them away before I arrived was that he had some secret to tell me. Roman chuckled to himself. If that's the case, I should make him more comfortable. Then gently replied, "I'm not sure either." He just sat down on the chair, comfortably resting his arms on the armrest to talk to Anthony. "I spent a lot of money to change myself. And now I still change every day even though I haven't done anything." After saying that, Roman's handsome face slightly curled into a smirk. "But I'm glad to see you again." Anthony didn't reply. His emerald green eyes flashed with an unfathomable aloofness. Roman took the glass of wine and softly repeated his words. "Back then?" Anthony chuckled and recalled the unpleasant story. "The time when you, who was forced to choose between a political marriage with the Lawrence family and our friendship, were caught sleeping with my cousin in the warehouse." "Really?" He recounted the story, adding a half-hearted and half-obscure assessment that made Roman a little uncomfortable. While Roman remained silent, Anthony continued the story without hiding his disdain. "It is true that secrets are kept quite closely at social gatherings. But I still did not expect you to go this far before your own wedding." Anthony chuckled and asked Roman's opinion. "So would you accept the invitation to this party as a confirmation that you agreed to my proposal?" "I will keep this matter a secret." Without waiting for Roman's agreement, Anthony assumed that he would only announce the incident, then directly made the proposal. "So let's discuss it together about the marriage between you and the Barco family." Roman's purple eyes flashed with confusion. He tried to recall the memories related to the above events, thinking to himself, the marriage with the Barco family. Time warped and rewinding like a movie appeared before his eyes. This memory was when the young Roman Dimitri was standing in front of Anthony's room door. He stood there for a long time, his face downcast, looking at the tip of his shoes, questioning himself, even though he had betrayed Anthony Barco. Roman looked up at the door separating him from the truth he was about to face. And he asked his father to establish a political marriage with the Lawrence family. Roman mustered up all his courage, holding the doorknob and encouraging himself. "I can't avoid them forever. I will use this opportunity to mend the relationship between the two families." Roman just opened the door and entered. He saw Anthony sitting on the chair, smiling warmly. "You're late, Roman. Come here quickly and sit down well." Sitting next to him at this time was a younger girl. Anthony quickly said, "Let me introduce. This is Emily Barco. She is my cousin." The little girl greeted. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Roman." He was a bit surprised and greeted me back as Roman. Anthony politely suggested, "Let her drink with us." "Right. This is her first time here, so she can only walk around by herself." The little girl sitting next to her clasped her hands together. Nervous and shy, Roman listened and agreed comfortably. Of course. She was a part of his family. Emily timidly poured wine into her cousin's glass. He didn't care about her cousin. "Emily, you have to pour wine for Roman too." He heard that and quickly said, "It's okay, I can pour it myself." As soon as he heard the displeased sentence, Anthony scowled. "You bastard are showing off that you are about to get married, wife?" Roman's voice suddenly weakened before his anger. "Anthony, about that." He smiled faintly and quickly interrupted. "Don't worry. From now on the Barco family will not touch the Lawrence family anymore." Roman immediately believed it after hearing that. His face lit up with a bright light. His eyes were much more excited. "Really?" Anthony smiled and spoke to him as if comforting a child. So he didn't have to force himself. Just drink to his heart's content. Roman foolishly thought he had removed all the knots. Happily receiving the wine from his hand, he closed his eyes and drank the glass of wine in one gulp in joy and excitement. His eyes narrowed in joy and then gradually darkened. In the dark night, faint moans echoed. Roman felt his head pounding, trying to lift his heavy eyelids, wondering where this place was. Roman woke up when he saw the naked girl lying face down. And both of them were lying on the bed. At this moment, he still hadn't had time to form the thoughts in his head. It was just a jumble of chaotic and bewildered emotions. Impossible. What is this? What the hell is going on? Roman was still confused and had not figured out what was going on when Anthony's scream from outside the door made him jump up. "Roman." He looked at Roman with angry eyes as if he was about to eat him alive. "What did he do?" Roman panicked and stammered, "Nonsense. No. This matter." He looked at the girl beside him who was still lying still. Then remembered the last time before he lost consciousness. He drank a glass of wine. He repeated a sentence like a lost soul. "This matter. I can't remember." Apart from the dim candlelight, the whole room was dark. Anthony's voice slowly rang out. "Listen carefully, Roman." He sat on the table, his hands clasped together, his tone dangerous and threatening. "No matter who you cheated on, it's none of my business. But you touched the young lady of the Barco family." Roman Dmitri sat huddled on the opposite side of the table listening to every word he threatened. "I can't let things go like this." Facing Roman, who was sitting there cowardly and trembling, Anthony arrogantly said, "I will give you a choice. Either I will expose the whole truth and then you will be successful then. Or," he emphasized the second option, making Roman's face pale with fear, "you must marry the Barco family's descendants to restore our relationship." Anthony slyly threatened, "What you just did made me very angry. But if you become a member of Barco, I will calm down and forgive you." Roman sat down in front of him as if he was on trial for his mistakes. Anthony's voice still echoed, "Now which side will you choose?" That was the past that Roman had gone through. Now Baek Jong-hyuk had just recalled that ugly past. He thought to himself, it turned out that was all that had happened. All the pieces had returned to their original positions. If the marriage broke down because Roman had tainted his descendants before the Barco family, then Dimitri's honor would fall straight to the bottom of the abyss. The two of them had received enough criticism from the public. Roman didn't seem to have enough confidence to face his father's wrath. But he couldn't choose the other side either. Because he truly loved Flora. He didn't want to give up the faith that he had forced himself to establish. Nor did he want to smear Flora in this situation. Roman looked at the glass of wine in his hand thoughtfully. So the reason he committed suicide while making the choice. He wanted his own death to be able to solve everything story. After thinking, he tilted his head back and drank some wine, still silently saying to himself, a weak person who had never accomplished anything in his life. That was Roman Dmitri. In Roman's body, he secretly felt sorry. How miserable and pathetic. Seeing Roman still pondering, Anthony urged, Why are you hesitating? Roman, the connection between our two families can shake up the entire Northeast region. He became more and more enthusiastic, talking about his ambition. No one can oppose us. You also take advantage of the power of the Barco family in the Northeast. There is no reason for you to have to. Don't let Roman interrupt him at the climax with a strongly provocative sentence. Is that all? Anthony was suddenly interrupted. He lost a beat and only had time to exclaim. Roman put down the glass and leaned it all down on the table and asked again. I have to accept a political marriage just because of that reason, ah. Anthony sat up and frowned. You must have misunderstood. This is not an option. If you refuse, I will announce everything in the warehouse to the whole world. Think about how the reputation of the Dmitri family will be affected. Think carefully, if you still want to live with your head held high. He just finished speaking. Roman put his feet straight on the table. A loud bang made Anthony shut up. Anthony looked at Roman's strange behavior in surprise. Completely different from the timid boy he used to threaten easily. Roman crossed his legs and spoke arrogantly. How many times do I have to say it for you to understand? The Dmitri family doesn't need to accept the Barco family's offer for such a pathetic reason. At this time, the party outside was still going on very lively. People were chatting and wearing warm clothes. Very happy. Miss Sophia was chatting happily. Suddenly glanced over here and discovered him. Roman was leisurely walking out when he saw her excitedly calling back. Mr. Roman, where have you been? He said softly. I just need to attend to something. It seems like I will have to leave early because of it. Sophia felt a little regretful after hearing that. What? Really? The party has just started. I should stay a little longer. Roman smiled and refused. I'm sorry. This is an urgent matter. The people around heard that. Each person said a polite sentence. Sir Roman, really, I'm so sorry. I still have many things to say to you. You too. Let's talk together again when we have the chance. Roman quickly said goodbye to everyone and walked out. Just after leaving the party, he heard a loud noise. Take back what you just said, you bastard. Hold on a little. He paid attention to it. The noise came from the place where the knights following the young ladies and young masters of the families gathered. A loud banging sound rang out again, startling him as he looked towards the there. The noise just now caused a knight's iron helmet to be blown away. A loud scream rang out. Kevin. The collision caused a red-haired boy to fall to the ground. Then a voice mocked Kevin. What are you expecting? Dimitri's level is only this much. Kevin turned around with an annoyed look. Chris beside him spoke up to advise him. Hold it, Kevin. The two Barco knights who had just been mocking each other exchanged understanding glances. The two of them took turns mocking. What was he thinking when he let a kid like this be his guard? Look at his helmet. It doesn't even fit the speculator. They stood around Kevin and laughed. It seemed like the kid just picked up a random helmet that fit him and claimed to be his guard. Be casual about it. Chris beside him protested in annoyance. The Barco knights were trained verbal fighting instead of swordsmanship. He replied arrogantly. Who knows? He said while pressing his hand on Kevin's head. I'm very confident that even without training, my sword-holding ability is still better than this brat's. Kevin clenched his lips and listened to him mocking. This is the reason why everyone calls you young master of the Dmitri family idiots. After listening, he lowered his face and ordered to take back what he said. Young Master Roman. He didn't do anything to be called that. Then he grabbed his hand and shouted a warning. So, take back what you just said. You bastard. He angrily slapped him in the face. How dare you? His hat was blown away. Chris shouted anxiously. He turned around and was about to draw his sword to deal with it. But he paused. His heart was quite uneasy. He was a knight of the Barco family. The Dmitri family was currently in conflict with the Barco. His face was filled with worry. If he caused trouble here, not only would he cause trouble for the young master, but also the entire Dmitri family would be involved in this problem. Kevin slowly sat up and stopped talking. I am Sir Roman's knight. His face was red from the slap just now. Gritting his teeth and telling him, I don't want to fight with thugs pretending to be knights like you. He clicked his tongue and laughed. Then he raised his hand to slap Kevin with full of aggression. Okay, let's see how long he can keep that pride. A hand appeared and held his hand tightly. He avoided looking. Kevin was surprised. Chris beside him was equally surprised. Roman held the knight's hand tightly. Kevin exclaimed in surprise, "Young master." Roman turned to look at him with an unpleasant gaze. Before he could finish his sentence, he was slapped in the face. That slap made him stunned. His hand touched his face that had just been slapped. Dazed. What was that? I just got slapped. I didn't even have time to react. He shouted. Before he could finish his sentence. Another slap. A fool like you. He still couldn't believe it. Then stood up and was about to say something. Before he could finish speaking, Roman slapped him again. This time he mumbled a few words. He was immediately hit on the head by him. He was in so much pain that he couldn't come to his senses. As if he was about to cry, Roman ordered, "You." His eyes were fierce. He looked up. At this moment, Anthony sat in his room. His face was pale. Damn it, what the hell happened? Roman. Then he remembered the conversation between him and Roman. I was talking to you about the matter of taking responsibility for you putting your hands on our young lady. Isn't it much better to propose marriage to the Barco family's descendants than to have to mortgage the property? This is the last consideration I can give you. If you don't accept it, you've already made an irreparable mistake. Roman just smiled sarcastically. Just do whatever you like. I'm already called a fool. Even if I have one or two more rumors about that fake evil. Nothing has changed. Besides, maybe you need to behave properly? He didn't believe what he just heard. What? Angie said seriously. I chose to break off the engagement because I wanted to. Not because of your threats. More or less you have fulfilled your own wish since Dmitri turned his back on the Lawrence family. But now you are baring your fangs at me. How should I react properly? He added coldly, should I help the Lawrence family to bring back the Barco family? His face was pale. He emphasized, to relieve my hatred for you? Roman had already calculated it. I had researched the Barco family. Their connection with the central government and their influence that came with it was undeniable. However, their power only came from that connection. If we only consider it based on wealth and power, then the family with the real power in the northeast is Dmitri. Not Barco. Roman stared at him coldly. He trembled, listening to every word he said. Now, what will you do? He lowered his head, not daring to raise it. If this matter was resolved, you will no longer interfere in matters related to the Lawrence family. Right? Roman replied. Exactly. He hesitated. Then, let's just end this here. After recalling that conversation, he still couldn't believe it. Roman had changed. He was trembling with fear. Not only his face, but also his actions, eyes, and tone of voice, all made the person opposite him afraid. He was no longer the idiot he used to know. He had completely become a different person. What had happened to him? While he was thinking, someone called him, "Young master." He was startled and shouted, "Don't disturb me at this time." The person outside hesitated and reported, making him startled. But Sir Roman and his knight were. At this time outside the palace. Everyone was in an uproar. The knight was kneeling before Roman, groaning and begging, "Please sir, please forgive me. I will never do that again. Please sir." Kevin came to advise him. "Young master, I think you have beaten him enough." Chris continued to advise. "He is right. Please consider the relationship with the Barco family and end this here." Roman's face did not change color. I am the one who decides whether he has been beaten enough. Even if he dies, that is the price he has to pay for his words and actions. Anthony's loud voice suddenly rang out. What does this mean? He criticized. Roman, even if you are the eldest son of the Dmitri family, I will not forgive such things. If you do not apologize for your rude actions just now. Roman glanced at him. He interrupted. Why should I apologize? Then he looked at the knight whose face was already swollen. This guy had slandered me. And touched the people of the Dmitri family. Roman turned to ask, Anthony Barco, do you really think I am the one in the wrong in this matter? He reproached him again. Even so, you've gone too far. Roman replied without hesitation. Too far. Haven't I told you? My personal grudge can destroy our relationship as well as our two families. He added, making him pale. So from today on, you should try to review your behavior. Then Roman leaned his face close to him and threatened. I'm not patient at all. Now decide what you're going to do. His head echoed with Roman's previous words. Should I help the Lawrence family hinder the Barco family? In his heart, he hated it beyond description. Damn it. But on the surface, he still bowed his head and admitted it. Thinking back, he did the right thing. Roman laughed smugly at this moment. Listening to him continue, I will let him receive the appropriate punishment. He turned his back and smiled kindly. We are indeed good friends. Aren't we? Roman came in front of the knight. So now. Saying that, he waved his hand. His eyes coldly commanded, grit your teeth. A loud slap made him faint. Everyone came to carry him away. But everyone had to admit, the Roman of the past was an idiot who didn't deserve respect. Even if he was a member of the Dmitri family, the most powerful family in the Northeast. Roman turned around and left, calling, Chris, Kevin, let's go back. Everyone looked at him in shock. But everyone in the present had no choice but to accept the fact that the idiot they knew no longer existed. After they left, the sun had already started to fade, and the sky was gradually setting. On the carriage, Kevin and Chris sat next to each other. Both of them had a look of regret. Kevin bowed his head and spoke first. I sincerely apologize. It was all my fault that they insulted me like that day. Chris also admitted his mistake. I was also at fault. The honor of the Dmitri family was trampled. Kevin was also beaten, and yet I couldn't do anything. What? Roman sat opposite them listening to the two of them repent without saying anything. Then he spoke again. Being able to endure this much must be very uncomfortable for the two of you. Thank you for enduring until I arrived. Chris and Kevin suddenly looked up when they heard that. He continued to speak. Being hot-tempered would only bring trouble. So your decision helped them prevent the worst scenario from happening. However, he paused for a moment. His face was cold. This is not the answer I wanted. Because in this entire Cairo area, no one has the right to touch the people of the Dmitri family. Roman's eyes immediately turned cold. Even if you have to endure someone, you must remember that person's face clearly. You must never forget your own anger. He sharply instructed. I can't stand the feeling of being on top of someone else. Want to follow a living life above 10,000 people like me. You guys are forced to adapt to this way of behaving. Kevin and Chris were a little surprised to hear those words. But it seemed like they understood what they had to do. The carriage continued to drive them back. Early morning at the mansion. Here an information about the Barco family. That you requested from the Information Guild. Black Moon. Mr. Hans presented. According to the Information Guild, Black Moon's report, the Barco family's recent actions have been very unusual. He flipped through the papers and pondered. Barco is a family that has settled in the Northeast for more than a century. After a few members of the Barco family worked for the central government, their family began to rise to become a powerful family in the region. Roman also agreed after reading it. Just like we found out for ourselves. Their military power is not very great. The butler also expressed. Honestly, I was quite surprised. I thought the power their military power is as great as their social status. Roman asserted. Which proves that the power they hold comes mainly from the central government. There are 2 empires and 6 kingdoms existing on the Salamander continent, of which the Cairo kingdom is the smallest and weakest country. Cairo's borders run along the northeast mountains and are connected to all other kingdoms. So this country has experienced many invasions, as a delicious prey that is always being watched by powerful enemies. Cairo Kingdom has no choice but to unite its army with the central government in order to survive. The central government also gained more power because of this. They also hold supreme power on the continent. If the noble family refuses to do their duty, they will be immediately considered as rebels and immediately captured by the soldiers. After the rebels are subdued, their land will be confiscated and turned into the property of the country. A part of their land will be given to the lord of the neighboring region as a reward for helping to suppress the rebellion. The rest will be given to the new noble who willingly submits to the central government. It is this system of influence that gives the Barco family invisible power when they unite with the government. Hans was surprised to hear him explain like that. I didn't expect it to be this extent. He continued, just like the government, the Barco family could borrow such a large amount of money from the Golden Bank. He looked at the information sheet about the Barco family. If the Barco family borrowed this money with credit without any collateral, then perhaps that money was invested in the BG mercenary group. The BG mercenary group is a group of hundreds of A-class mercenaries everywhere, the core of which is in BG. This group mainly earns money from participation fees in colonial wars. Mr. Hans reminded, considering the number of soldiers that the Barco family has been mobilizing recently, they probably plan to attack Lawrence within half a month. Roman was quite surprised. It turns out that the Barco family has completed all the preparations. Butler Hans hesitantly asked about the battle. The Lawrence family seemed cannot win? Roman replied firmly, even if it comes to defending a siege they'll only last a month at most. Roman thought to himself. He had told Anthony that he would not interfere in matters related to the Lawrence family anymore. But if Roman Dmitri wanted to continue living, he had to eliminate the threat to himself. The Barco family. No matter how powerful the Barco family had, they would never have a chance to defeat the Dmitri family. He said with a bright light in his eyes. If he borrowed the power of the Dmitri family, it would be a small matter to cause the Barco family to decline. But even doing so would be useless. Indeed, the Dmitri family was one of the first great families in Cairo. But they were not a threat in the eyes of the other families in the northeast. What needed to be done now? This was an opportunity to restore the family's position. He sighed and stood up. I need to see my father immediately, that is. Now is the time for us to pay for the promise last time. In another place, to the bustling market, everyone was startled and looked in one direction. Gradually a figure approached. It was a man wearing iron armor covered in blood. That guy slowly laughed out his hat. It was Lucas, a mercenary. He had already opened his mouth to criticize. Dmitri really hadn't changed at all. Arriving in front of a blacksmith shop, his armor had been taken off and placed on the table. Someone said, "Look at your appearance." It was Hendrik, a craftsman of the Dmitri family. He asked Lucas with a dazed expression. Was this battle very difficult? He sighed. Don't mention it anymore. I was almost killed by those reckless bastards. He didn't ask any more but looked at the sword in his hand. The quality of this sword is so bad. Where did you buy it? Lucas sighed. At the first shop I saw. It was because of him that I almost died. Hendrik got angry when he heard that. To buy iron and weapons, you have to go to the Dmitri family's shop. Who would be stupid enough to ignore such a top-notch production place? Lucas didn't argue back. Stood up. That's why I'm here. Thanks to you. Hendrik is still enthusiastic. I'll make you a whole outfit. It'll take a while. Lucas finished handing it over to Hendrik and turned to the door. It's okay. I'll probably go back to Dimitri's house to rest while waiting. On his face, he was pensive. The battlefield made me so tired. On his way back, he saw a group of people gathered together. He was curious. What was there that made them gather so much? Lucas wondered, is there another battlefield? I don't intend to take on any more work. But, after that, he cut into the crowd. He couldn't get out but he was curious. It turned out that people were gathering to read the notice board. He read it and saw. Recruitment notice. On the notice, recruiting soldiers. Prerequisite. Healthy. Have the ambition to become stronger. Number of recruits. 30. Salary is 3 silver coins per month. Lucas looked at the notice and thought. On average a family only needs 5 gold coins per month to live. So considering all the risks, this job is not bad. But if only there were no such condition. At the end of the notice it said, special condition. You will only work for Roman Dmitri, not the Dmitri family. Keep this in mind and only apply when you are ready. Choose his life to Roman. A man standing beside him advised Lucas. Don't even think about signing up. You can't fight against hundreds of people. He turned around and said, no. I look like that but I'm a B-class mercenary. I need at least 50 silver coins every month to pledge my loyalty to the nobles. Lucas suddenly realized, wait. He turned around and asked. You said there were hundreds of people applying. The man nodded. Yes. He was quite surprised. Is this job really worth that much? You make it clear. No matter how good the conditions are. It's not for the Dmitri family. It's for the idiot of the Dmitri family. Roman Dmitri. Who knows what kind of trials you'll have to go through when you become his soldier. Lucas finished speaking and everyone there turned to look at him. The atmosphere gradually became silent. Seeing everyone like that, he was confused. The other man heard that, knowing for sure that he didn't know anything about the matter here. He also slowly explained, You're an outsider so you don't know. Sir Roman is no longer the idiot he used to be. Not only did he destroy the Bloodfang, he also treated everyone very well. Lucas heard that with a surprised expression. That person also understood why he had such an attitude. At first we didn't believe it either. But after hearing Clark speak, I started to think again. Hearing a stranger's name, he asked, Clark, who is it? He introduced. After the Clark family's son became Sir Roman's subordinate, his family's poor life became much better. That person vaguely remembered. Let's see, what was his son's name? It seems to be Kevin. Recalling a while ago, at the Dmitri family's mansion, Kevin wondered, what? He asked with a puzzled face. Vacation. Roman replied. From tomorrow I will allow you to take 3 days off. Rest is also a way to train. He said and gradually left. You have worked hard, so rest assured and spend time with your family. Kevin still listened with a blank face. Yes, young master. So he returned to his room to prepare his things. Even so, he was still puzzled. Vacation? After changing clothes, he still couldn't get rid of his thoughts. I'm a bit unfamiliar. Back then if I didn't work I would die right away. Since entering the castle, he hasn't seen his family again. I wonder what they're doing now. Walking out the door, still not able to get out of his thoughts, he heard the butler Hans call. Kevin. He was startled and replied. Sir Hans. He happily gave him clothes. And after being gone for so long, he was going to return home like this? Roman had already prepared some clean clothes for him to wear. So he changed out. He didn't have time to react. He took the clothes that the butler gave him. Not only that, he also put a small bag of money on top. He also needed money to buy gifts for his family. From now on he would receive 30 silver coins every month. Mr. Hans kept chatting happily. Just enjoy it. It doesn't matter if you buy gifts or waste them. Hearing the butler's words, Kevin received the things with a blank face. So he immediately changed into a new, clean set of clothes, his face beaming as he bought a bag of bread and returned. His mood bright. Wearing the new clothes, he was excited. He couldn't believe that clothes could be this soft. He thought, just wearing them was enough to make him happy. He praised the loaves of bread in his hand. He also bought a lot of bread for his family. The hot bread smells so good. Kevin kept walking on the street. He was so happy that outsiders could see the flowers around him. I'm sure Mary would be very happy. She once said that her lifelong dream was to eat ice cream in a freshly baked loaf of bread. After saying that, he thought back to the past. Every day, Mary always had to complain about the whole family having to eat stale bread. He also thought back to himself. He couldn't even buy a loaf of toast for her. A loaf of freshly baked bread cost twice as much as stale bread. With that, there were always creditors with knives and swords coming to the house. Thinking of this, his hands clenched. No matter what, he was determined. He had to be stronger under the guidance of the young master. When he got home, Kevin's face was even more evil than when Roman announced his leave. The scene before his eyes was his father and mother leisurely drinking tea and chatting. His younger sister was happily admiring the flower garden. He was surprised. What's going on, Kevin? How peaceful is that scene? He wondered. How strange. It felt like he was asked to go to the outskirts of the castle instead of the slums. But, while she was confused, Mary noticed. She called out loudly for her big brother. Kevin's parents heard and turned to look. They were also surprised when they saw. His mother rushed to hug him. Oh my God, how long has it been? Mary was overjoyed. It's this big brother. It's really this big brother. His father Mr. Clark also ran over to ask. Are you okay? Kevin hugged his mother and asked, "Mother, Father, this house." His father just explained, "Sir Hans came and gave us this house to live in. He also gave us a piece of land to farm. It was said that it was the order of young Master Roman." His mother also added, "Not only that, everyone in the castle also helped us a lot. Now we can feel life in this slum." His eyes lit up. "Now everything is clear. I understand, Sir Roman." He was so moved that tears welled up in his eyes. He exclaimed, "Thank you very much." His father suddenly noticed. He immediately asked, "Son, your mother heard that and let go of her son to see." Clark immediately questioned, "Did Sir Roman hit you?" Kevin was confused and immediately denied. "What? It's not like that. It's not like that." His mother put her hands on his shoulders. "You can tell us the truth. If they treat you like that, we are also ready to." Kevin immediately pushed his mother away. "Sir Roman is not that kind of person at all. His mother is hard to understand. So what's wrong with my face?" He slowly told them, "Mom, Dad, the truth is." After that story, there was a voice of doubt. "You are really serious about telling us to believe this?" The men sat together and discussed. Clark, Kevin's father, persuaded his friends. "Come on, then do you have any other way to explain about our new house and land?" His friend also acknowledged it a bit. "That's right." Clark still persuaded him. "Don't believe those rumors." According to Kevin, he slapped the damn knight of the Barco family to protect his knight. Is there any custom of a noble to protect his subordinates like that? That person is disgusting? Gradually people started spreading rumors about Roman. Unbelievable. Was that stupid young master the one who did it? One person told another, "You also saw the current life of Clark and his family, right? I heard that Sir Roman gave them those things because their son Kevin became his subordinate. I also heard that he gave them houses, gave them land. He even slapped the Barco knight. All because of Kevin." Clark's close friends heard him say that himself. "Just yesterday I felt sorry for the kid every time I saw him. But I saw him making a fuss about something in the store before." "Are you sure your close friend didn't see wrongly?" The children also kept talking. "He heard that Mr. Roman treats his people very well. I also want to be like Kevin. I just need to gain Mr. Roman's trust. Like Clark's family." Those rumors spread more and more. Roman's reputation also improved a lot. Roman Dmitri is very considerate to his people. If you can gain his trust, you can live a completely different life. The scene changed back to where everyone was reading the recruitment notice in a daze. The man talked for a while. That's why there were so many people applying to become his soldiers. Lucas was stunned when he heard this. What was going on? Destroying Bloodfang, and also the incident at the social party. Did Roman do all that? He recalled the scene from the past. The Roman Dmitri he knew wouldn't do such things where. I also saw him causing trouble in the casino because he lost all his money 2 years ago. He said to himself, "It's only been 2 years. What happened to this world?" The man beside him didn't understand what he said. He laughed happily. "This is interesting. I want to see for myself." "It's already dark now," Jonathan reported. "The testing phase is going quite smoothly. We only need to provide the minimum number of soldiers for entry. The rest of the overall process will be handled by Mr. Roman." Mr. Romeo asked, "Haven't we wasted too much time?" Jonathan advised, "This is your last chance to take everything back. Are you okay with this?" Jonathan still persuaded. "It is too dangerous to form an army for an individual. At least ask Roman's purpose first." Suddenly, Romeo interrupted. "Jonathan," he recounted, "when I heard that Roman would participate in the Barco family's social banquet, I thought that he was about to form an alliance with the Barco family to drive out our second generation of blood. But Roman stood in front of all those nobles, slapped the Barco family's knight, and even resisted Anthony's tension. Even if Anthony could join forces with our second-generation army, to exert pressure into a fatal blow, then obtain the succession and complete the goal of revenge." Romeo's hand pushed the wine glass. But Roman, who had been considered a fool for more than a decade, had started to live its own life after the Bloodfang incident. Romeo's voice was full of pride. "As a father, I was completely happy for it." Jonathan understood his words. Romeo asked about the military recruitment. So how many people had applied? 50. 100. With its reputation, getting over 50 people would be a great joy. Jonathan calculated. It was estimated that there were over 500 people. Romeo was shocked when he heard that number. What? Scene change to the city gate. Everyone has arrived to participate in the recruitment. Chris enters the tent. He calls Roman and announces. The testing process is complete. Roman is now deep in thought, waiting for something. It's another day before the recruitment. The full moon is high in the sky. And the sounds of stars coming from the building. Lucas inside the bar drinks a sip of beer. He laughs contentedly. Dimitri's black beer is really the best. His cheeks are a little rosy. Lucas thinks directly. But I still can't believe that there are so many people gathered before the recruitment. The number of applicants is even more than I expected. The people in the building continue to talk. Not only that, Lucas looks at the group of 3 men sitting in the position in front. They are laughing and joking noisily. Continue looking at the cloth hanging on the waist of the left person of the 3 people mentioned above. He continued to speculate. At the table in the corner. They were definitely C-rank mercenaries. Finished. He looked towards the other 3 people in front of the bar. And the 3 people at the bar. They didn't look like mercenaries. But they were probably people with combat experience. Finally, Lucas concluded in his train of thought. Except for this place. There were quite a few inns in Dimitri. In a scene where there were 5 to 6 people per square meter like now. The number of people registering was actually higher than his expectations. He was really curious. But why? If they were people with enough combat experience, they should do a better job. People probably weren't just curious like him. Not wanting to think further, Lucas slammed his cup down on the table. I give up. I don't understand. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly heard a young man ask another person. Henderson, why are you here? Didn't you say you were going to join the Lawrence team? Lucas heard it. It caught his attention. Looking at the conversation between the two, Henderson replied, at first it was true. Lawrence is my hometown after all. Speaking of this, his eyes were filled with sadness. But after seeing the day Roman Dimitri destroyed the Bloodfang in Lawrence, I thought again. Those who weren't there wouldn't believe it. Returning to that day, he stood in the crowd, extremely surprised by the scene in front of him. But that day, I saw that day in the square. Roman Dimitri, covered in blood. The scene of Roman pulling an old man's hair. Henderson continued, his hand holding the hair and dragging the leader of the Bloodfang. Can you imagine it? Asking and answering himself. A young master of a noble family. Punishing Bloodfang for laying hands on his people. The scene of a man stepping on something and spraying blood. Going to another territory to smash the leader's skull. Henderson suddenly stared forward, expressing his fear. I couldn't get that image out of my mind. Suddenly, the 3 people who were predicted to be C-rank mercenaries turned to face him at the same time. He continued, everyone was doubting and denying the incident in Lawrence. The 3 people who were said to be capable in front of the bar were also listening to him on this side. But I was the one who witnessed it with my own eyes and felt that Roman Dimitri was not as weak as the rumors said. Henderson slammed his hand on the table and roared. He was truly a good leader who could fight for his people. The 2 older brothers on the other side, the other smiled sympathetically at his words, and this time being recruited as a soldier is a rare opportunity of a lifetime to become his subordinate. I will pass the selection round. Receive the right to Dimitri and live as his subordinate Roman Dimitri. Lucas silently repeated that name in his mind. Roman Dimitri is the one worthy of choosing his life. I understand. Looking at the general view outside the building, he thought, this great commotion probably wasn't by chance. Early morning, outside the tower, the day of the selection of Dimitri's training area. Lucas followed the flow of people entering the tower. They laughed and talked to each other about holding a celebration after the selection. He fell into deep thought. If everything he heard was true, then what choice should he make? Continuing to look at the crowd beside him, Lucas thought, everyone here had the same thoughts as him. Those who were full of doubts submitted their applications after hearing all the rumors. The moment of choice will happen when we see the real Roman. Suddenly his eyes looked down, questioning, what is it? Everyone fell silent. Lucas's feet turned. Everyone bowed in unison to those who were walking over. That was the young master of the Lord Dmitri family, Roman Dmitri. The crowd continued to bow respectfully and split into two paths for Roman and his men to pass. Lucas thought to himself, even though he wasn't asked. Everyone here unconsciously bowed their heads to make way for him. And a confirmation of the thought occurred in Lucas's mind. Those rumors were true. Before the large back of Roman, he gradually walked up the stairs under the gaze of the entire group. The air pressure around him slowly dropped. Roman said to them, "Raise your heads." He stood in front of them with a clear voice. As the information was written on the notice, "Today I will select 30 brave warriors to fight for me. But before we start, I have something to tell everyone." Roman shouted and began to say things that expressed his ideals. "I, Roman Dmitri, have no intention of living in seclusion in a distant territory." Looking at the faces filled with surprise below, "I will continuously fight to achieve a higher position than I currently have. And in the process, your lives will be in danger as inevitable. So those who are not sure about following me can immediately return." Roman continued, "The thing you must think about when your heads are cut off on the battlefield should not be resentment towards the one who brought you there, but rather resentment for not being able to stand by and witness your leader." The back of the powerful and mighty ruler appeared in his words, standing high up like the most powerful monument on the continent. The people in the crowd all had blank looks. And Lucas was a little panicked and wondered, what is he talking about? Let's leave aside the most powerful thing on the continent. Isn't it because of that his family is being threatened? Shouldn't he be less arrogant? However, when he saw Roman's serious and trustworthy face, he felt, but for some reason, maybe he really can do it. The vice captain of the Dmitri Knights spoke. "Okay, now I will guide everyone's first round of selection." Chris looked towards the man holding the crossbow and arrows. The selection was simple. The participants would stand in the pre-designed position. This attacker and defender would shoot 3 shots towards everyone. Each arrow might just graze, or it might hit the target behind, or it might directly hit everyone's head, causing an unexpected death. Chris's eyes flashed with coldness, declaring that only those who did not move when the 3 arrows were shot would pass the first round of selection. They had all sorts of expressions. Anxious, emotionless. When they heard Chris's words, the words of the vice captain of the Dmitri house echoed high up in the building. The selection would be carried out in order of name calling. Dirk, move to the pre-designed position. Next is Morrison, go to the next street next to Dirk. The attackers and defenders started preparing their bows and arrows. Morrison standing beside him was a little frightened. Judging in his heart, he had said everything, but would they really aim at the person standing there? Logically speaking, who in this world would use death to select soldiers for themselves? At the moment the arrow was raised to the bow. He thought, this archer must be a very skilled person. Seeing a drop of sweat rolling down the cheek of the person holding the arrow, he kept reminding himself, he would never make a mistake. Following the sound of the wind, the hand released. The arrow flew away. It flew into the target, only a few centimeters away from the neck of the person standing there. Seeing Dirk's panic, Morrison encouraged himself. Okay, this is a psychological battle. The archer continued to raise the second arrow. This time he had the mentality that, as long as he stood still and believed that everything was fine. Just when he was sure that the arrow would miss, what happened was completely opposite to his prediction. It pierced through the right leg of the young man. Morrison was stunned. The others were the same, except for Lucas, who was calm. That young man deserved it because pain. Then Dirk screamed in pain and hugged his bleeding leg and fell down. Chris ran to the head and called for medical help. He told the soldiers, "Bring something here to carry him away quickly." The listener immediately obeyed. While lying on the stretcher, the young man kept groaning in pain. The remaining people were confused and scared. Was the mental preparation to be shot by an arrow that he had just said true? It was unbelievable. Chris coldly called the next person's name. Hearing his name, he was extremely scared. Morrison. Staring at the blood still stuck on the wooden target. The arrow had been stuck straight into the thigh of the young man just now. If the position was at the head, he would have died immediately. Morrison panicked and said what he thought. Damn it, this is too crazy. I only signed up for a chance become a knight. Chris coldly explained. This is exactly what the young master said. At the same time he said, I will say it again for those who choose to give up. He looked at Morrison, who was so scared that he cried and was bowing his head. If you guys are afraid of being shot by an archer, then give up now. With Roman's stern gaze still the same, Chris spoke up to remind them. If you can endure until the end, even if you are shot by an arrow, then everyone will have the honor of receiving a certificate of passing the first round of selection. Chris also consolidated his words. The cowards who are still in this training area, quickly leave immediately. Back to the past. The day before the selection, Roman said, I will explain your roles again. The 4 people stood in a row and listened seriously. The first selection is tomorrow. You guys will be shot by an arrow. The shooter is also a veteran archer of this area. He will only shoot areas that do not cause fatal injuries. The archer boy clapped his hands in front of his chest and smiled with prestige. I won't miss. So don't worry. Looking at the direction Chris was holding the gift box, Roman said, this is your reward. Opening the chest. Inside was a lot of gold coins. Seeing the sparkling light radiating from it, everyone laughed happily. He had no expression on his face. Continued his suggestion and asked the question. You won't be in much pain, because there will be a doctor on duty. But you will still be hit by the arrow. Do you still want to do it? 4 people said loudly in unison. Yes. The voice rang out in the room. Roman said, if there is nothing else, you can go. They obeyed. The room became quiet again. Chris asked suspiciously, my lord, why do you have to go to this extent? At this moment, he was sitting on the chair, preparing to deal with other paperwork, firmly replying, we cannot find suitable people by just bullying them. We must show them that they are risking their lives. Although the chance of being shot by an arrow is 1 in 100. Most candidates will be defeated by the fear of that 1% chance. Hearing this, Chris continued to wonder, so what conditions must they meet to become your subordinates? He replied, I want someone with a strong mentality. In other words, someone born with the heart of a beast. Chris repeated, the heart of a beast. Roman explained the reason. Yes, those born with the heart of a beast will quickly become stronger, even if they start from 0. And only those with that quality can walk with me. Back to the current round 1 warrior selection. One person was completely drunk. What kind of crazy selection was this? Followed by a group of people discussing and deciding to leave under the city gate. Do you intend to take responsibility if I die? Does he have to continue holding the position in the afternoon court? I don't want to risk my life for Roman Dmitri. I give up. I don't either. Chris observed the situation and counted. About 100 people gave up. He looked at Roman and Call. Roman was thinking about the heart of a beast at this moment. It was an inborn talent. Recalling Kevin's face at that time. Like Kevin, who did not hesitate to swing his sword to cut off his wrist at my command. Then came the memory of the vice-captain of the Dmitri Knights, Sir Chris, who asked how to become stronger from the person who had humiliatingly defeated. He concluded a sentence. Those kinds of people could be said to be born with the heart of a beast. Those who do not have the heart of a beast, no matter how strong they are, cannot win against those who were different from birth. Roman thought, I must filter out those kinds of people through this selection. He said loudly with determination. Continuing to walk. The blue sky and white clouds covered the building. A person was panting from fatigue. Lucas looked at him and thought, that guy is in the inn. So he didn't give up. He saw Henderson trembling now, leaning against the wooden target. I guess he was telling the truth then. Even though he was shaking with fear now. Henderson cried, biting his lip and thinking, this is my chance to pledge allegiance to Lord Roman. He looked straight at the archer who was drawing his bow. I can't give up without doing anything. Each arrow flew towards him, hitting the target, seeing it a few centimeters from his temple. He hiccuped, feeling the dark atmosphere surrounding the young man holding the bow. Henderson wondered, no, should I give up? If I die it will be meaningless. The arrows flew quickly to his shoulder. The thought that came to his mind at this moment was, I still have time. The archer pursed his lips. Releasing the arrow out. Henderson's whole body trembled. Each shot right between his legs. A little more and his family's descendants would have been cut off. Chris announced. Henderson had passed, and he knelt down as if he couldn't get over his fear. Lucas laughed. Just a second more and he would have given up. He was lucky. And so the selection continued. Then the spring split was carried out. Except for those who had given up. There were about 400 candidates. The number of candidates who passed the first round was 120 people, along with the broken faces of those who remained. Roman thought, I had selected those who could prove useful through the first round of selection. Looking at a group of people including Henderson, he evaluated. There were people who passed while trembling. Then he turned to look at Lucas. As well as those who had passed without fear. Roman concluded. The two groups were not much different from his standards. They were both brave enough to suppress their fears. Looking at the whole group, I have to recognize the gems from the pile of pebbles that are here for some reason or have ulterior motives. I have to distinguish those who will look at me with respect or fear. The enemy declared, you all passed the first round. This selection round proves that you are warriors. But I will only accept 30 people. So I will kill all of you again through the second round. He said with their confidence. If you pass this selection round and become my subordinates, you will be able to live the life of a hunter. Lucas was surprised. The life of a hunter? Roman walked down the stairs. Now, let's start the second round of selection. The rules are very simple. He stood in front of a series of swords in wooden crates. As you can see, there are many different types of wooden swords prepared for you. The type or quantity is not important. He picked up a sword. Choose the sword you like. Roman slashed the air, proving your worth by dueling with me. Henderson was stunned. That day he planned to duel. Lucas smiled incomprehensibly. Alone with 120 of us that day? Roman's eyes narrowed slightly. You don't need to win. Those who can last a minute when fighting me. They will pass and receive better conditions than those written on the notice. One person gradually opened his mouth. Vulcan spoke first. I will duel first, he said with an expressionless face. The crowd made room for the two people facing each other. Roman asked, what is your name? He replied immediately, I am Vulcan. Looking at the sword in Vulcan's hand, he asked, are you okay with that wooden sword? He affirmed that it was no problem. Vulcan looked at him and pondered. Roman Dimitri's confidence was exaggerated. Was the rumor that he had subdued Bloodfang true that day? But even so, that day there was no way he could have defeated me in under a minute. Chris shouted, then get ready. Vulcan continued to think, I will pass if I can last a minute. But it doesn't matter, even if he is the person I will serve from now on. I will seize this opportunity. Chris turned the hourglass and shouted, start. Vulcan's thoughts were bigger than ever. To deeply engrave in his mind what kind of person I am. He held his sword and rushed forward to make a big slash. Vulcan's eyes immediately froze. Roman dodged. His two legs were twisted together. Vulcan immediately fell down. That made him terrified, surprised. At this moment, Roman's sword was pointed at Vulcan's neck. His eyes were calling out again. The next person. Lucas observed and judged. He was of another level. He dodged the attack quickly and moved very smoothly. I didn't expect to be able to move like that. This round of selection would be many times more difficult than the first round. A strong aura gradually erupted around Roman, creating fear in many people. At the moment Vulcan lost to Roman. The image of Roman standing tall with the sword on Vulcan's neck. His eyes seemed to want to eat him alive. Everyone around thought of one thing. In his disdainful eyes looking at the enemy under his feet. Everyone understood that Roman was too strong. But they thought that as time passed, other people fought Roman one after another. Even though they were having a hard time fighting such a strong person at that time. But they believed that he would be tired and his stamina would gradually decrease over time. An hour passed since the start of the second round of selection. After 60 matches, many candidates fell to the ground. Their faces filled with pain. 60 people lost. Roman had a cold expression. Opened his mouth to call the next person. His hand held his mirror. and cut straight into the person in front of him. Ah no. It was the loser sitting at his feet in fear. Roman did not show any confrontation after those 60 matches. The spectators around the arena were all shocked. Remembering what he said before the selection. If you pass this selection and become my subordinates, you will be able to live the life of a predator. It seemed that at this moment they understood the meaning of this sentence. Roman is a predator with an overwhelming aura, like a huge beast ready to take the prey it sees. A predator who can live the way he wants in a world where only the strongest survive. The people around him were amazed as they looked at him, feeling like those words would come true. They secretly thought, right now Roman was still considered the fool of the Dmitri family. This could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Looks of amazement and fear appeared on the faces of the people standing around the arena. They were determined to become Roman's subordinates. But a thought interrupted. But how can I fight against that monster? In everyone's eyes at that moment, Roman was like a devil rising from hell, always with darkness covering his entire body, making those below shiver with fear. Roman slowly said, if one contestant did not step forward, then everyone here would lose. Hearing that, they began to push each other forward. Almost no one dared to go up and fight the person standing there. At this time, a voice was heard. Okay, I will go. A face appeared. A small bag was hanging on his waist. A blue-haired man stood out, standing tall like a savior in a time of danger. He introduced himself. I am the 61st contestant. My name is Lucas. The sky was clear. The wind blew across and spread out. Lucas thought to himself at this moment. Monster. Roman Dmitri is a monster. Roman stood in front of Lucas. The aura was still there. The two stood opposite each other waiting for a new battle is about to break out. Lucas's train of thought has not stopped. Besides His Excellency's superior martial arts, thinking of His Excellency being able to cause such a pressuring atmosphere. Roman's eyes at this moment are no less than the auras around him. Roman is completely different from before. Just as he said, he will not stay in this remote place forever. Roman's figure stands like a giant monument. In Lucas's heart at this moment, he is certain of one thing. The person standing in front of him. He will conquer this entire continent. Lucas raises his hand and sword, ready to enter a fighting stance. I don't care about 8 silver coins. I will know if what Roman said is true or not in just 1 year. To do that, the hand holding the hourglass begins to flip over and count the time.